everyone, and welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. I'm Gus Kattengell, along with Mr. Jim Eichenhofer Pelicans.com, and John DeShazier, Mr. Radio Analyst for your New Orleans Pelicans over on the radio side. JD, man, it was so nice to be back home, to see a home game. And when you look at the performance the Pels put on, I think if I'm a Pels fan, I probably like what I saw as they took care of Sacramento.
Well, first, you buried the lead. Congratulations, Jim. Seattle Seahawks.
Sorry about that.
Super Bowl winners.
Thank you.
So we got to get that out of the way. But yeah.
I played hard.
Exactly. But it was encouraging because they were able to put together back-to-back wins, a huge comeback win in Minnesota, and then you're able to come home and not that the Pelicans can rest on any laurels, but not exhale, not take it for granted, not look down the sideline and say, Sacramento's an awful team that's lost 12 straight, and we just have a game. You got to be able to still go out there and do it. And so to go out there and do it the way they did it was impressive because it was a sluggish start. It didn't look great in the beginning. It looked like it was one of those where, okay, this is going to be a dogfight down to the end, and it really doesn't have to be. And they kind of flexed on Sacramento, and Sacramento flinched, and that was pretty much it. So from that standpoint, it was good to see because, they won a lot of categories. They won in fast break points. They won in points off turnovers. They had more three-pointers than the opponent. So those are things that win you games in the NBA.
That might have been the biggest three-point margin of the season in a positive way in terms of how many more threes you made than the opposing team. Just in general, too, wasn't it great to have a game where you didn't have to sweat it out in the fourth quarter? I had the stat during the game against Sacramento that the Pelicans had played 14 consecutive games where they hadn't won or lost by more than 10. So, it seems like almost every single game has come down to the last few minutes, and it's been great that they've had better results in those. But I'd be happy to take, maybe once a week, get a 30-point win, a couple times every so often against teams like that. So, I was just really happy that they were able to just dominate a game and have it not be something that you had to sweat it out.
Yeah, and there's pluses and negatives. Now, the plus is you play in that many close games, you play in that many clutch games. You hope to learn something from it, whether you win the game or lose it. But those are the lessons that you need to go through to become a better team in the NBA. So you got to go through some growing pains. And unfortunately for the Pelicans, they've been going through the growing pains. And you lose those clutch games, but you kind of figure out these are the ways we need to execute. This is how we need to maintain our composure in these situations. Okay, this is who needs the ball in his hands. This is who can create for us in these situations. This is who's going to make foul shots. This is going to make clutch shots. This is the guy who's going to defend. And, those things, you find out those things the more you're in those games. That's the plus. The minus is I started this season with an Afro bigger than Trey Murphy's, and all this worrying has me down to this. So, this is the downside. So hopefully this is something that they'll learn from and be able to utilize it in the future because that's the NBA, man. You play a ton of close games. You play a ton of 10-point games. You play a ton of clutch games. And the teams that handle those the best are the teams that go to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think there is definitely something to be said about them learning how to execute at the end of games and not so much, like they've played basketball before. Obviously, this isn't the first time they've been on a basketball court, but specifically some of the stuff that you talked about in terms of where the ball's going to go, I think has been a question mark in a lot of games up until recently. It seems like they've settled in a little bit more on Saddiq Bey as they're one of their biggest closers. And the great thing about him is that he's made a bunch of big threes. He made a huge three against Memphis on the road, but you can also post him up, and he's pretty reliable in terms of going him down in the post, and he's either going to score or draw free throws. So it did seem like they had to sort through a lot of that. And obviously it's not perfect, and I think they still are trying to figure out exactly how to run the offense in some of these crucial spots, but it's definitely gotten better.
See, and I think the big thing is, and this is no knock, Zion Williamson is your all-star, your best player. He doesn't make free throws consistently. Mm-hmm. So down the stretch, you're a little bit Trey Murphy, you would say, is probably the second best player. Sometimes he's the co-number one. Sometimes he's unable or struggles to get his shot in those situations. But as Jim just mentioned, Saddiq Bey generally gives you something good. He might be, 1 for 6 from three, and he'll bust a big three from the corner when you got to have it. Or he'll make the foul shots when you got to have it. Or he'll come out with a rebound in traffic when you have to have it. Those are the things to me that make a consistent closer, a guy when you're closing games, you're going to fail some. You're going to miss some shots. You're going to have some turnovers. but you put that guy in the situation enough and you feel comfortable enough that he will get something for himself or something for a teammate.
Well, I think one of the best commercials of all time now is Michael Jordan's Black and White, and it's the text on the commercial is all the times he failed, the missed free throws, the missed game winners, but you have to be put in those situations. Along the lines of what you guys are saying, there's two things that really popped in my head just now. You can't be in clutch situations if you're not doing things that Coach Borrego talked about when he took over as interim head coach, of winning habits. And what are you doing? Well, 6 straight games, including Sacramento now, where you have 30 points or more in the first quarter, getting off to good starts, right? Your defense is playing better. Lowest output. I understand it's Sacramento, but your defense, Jim, you've brought this up, over the last month and a half has gotten better. Herb Jones, one of those reasons why. Consistency in the lineup. There's a lot of things you can look at specifically as to why they're in clutch games and how they're learning to win, and it's specific, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think several of the things that you just mentioned kind of go hand in hand or tied into the lineup change that they made when Herb Jones came back 9 games ago. They're 5-4 over that stretch, and we, more specifically I, complain constantly about the defense needs to be better, and how many times, especially on the road, that they started off and they're down 12-2, and James Borrego has to call a timeout. It was really frustrating how many times you went into games where you knew it was going to be a difficult challenge. You're playing at Oklahoma City, you're playing at some of the best teams in the league, and in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game, it's already discouraging. So a lot of that stuff, like you said, Gus, has gone in the other direction. The defense is a lot better, and it does seem like those really bad starts have kind of gone away. I mean, you're going to have times where in the Minnesota game that they won, they were down 18 in that game. Wasn't necessarily a great first half or first 3 quarters, but they figured out a way to rally back and get into it. So, but I do think that the defense is kind of at the heart of a lot of the increase in competitiveness, because it's kind of the foundation. I mean, I've had said this before, that if your defense is shaky, it's almost impossible to be consistent, because you just can't rely on it, and you're gonna, unless you're the best offensive team in the league, if you're giving up 125 points, you're going to lose constantly. And I'm just glad to see that those numbers have come down a ton over the last couple of weeks.
Look, Herb Jones is the MVP of this team. His absence speaks volumes. His presence speaks volumes. Now, the thing you'd like to see is when he is absent, where is the same defensive intensity? Where is the same execution? And it can't be tied to one guy all the time, because unfortunately he's missed games, and so when he misses, it dips. And so that's what you got to figure out. I understand how important a defender he is, but a lot of games Herb will have 2 quick fouls in the first quarter, and then he goes to the bench, and you still got to figure out what to do. So you got to figure out what to do in his absence, as his team has been constructed, hopefully, to be able to survive when Zion Williamson doesn't play, or when Sadiq Bey doesn't play. You've got to be able to function, maybe not win at a high rate, but you can't just you can't be 2-12 when Herb Jones isn't playing. You got to be able to stay afloat until he gets back and sets your defense. But it's just amazing the value that he has, being a 6'5", 6'6" guard, that you have to have him defensively.
I mean, some of it to me is just the difference in when he's playing and not playing too. Just shows you how much they need more plus defenders. They don't have enough guys that are guys that you say, like, okay, this guy is out here for defense. I mean, Micah Peavy is an example of that, but there aren't a lot of other cases where you say this guy's better on the defensive end than the offensive end. So, I mean, he definitely seems like a huge security blanket. I mean, even in the games where he's playing but he's on the sideline, it feels like they play better defense. I'm not sure how to explain that part of it, but yeah, I just think that they need, whether it's the personnel to have more defense first guys, or just even the mindset of saying, I'm prioritizing that end of the floor that obviously Herb has.
And it's interesting, so you guys bring that up. Something that just popped in my head too is the ability of Coach Borrego over the last month and a half to kind of understand and recognize certain games, certain situations. I need to call in the reinforcements. One of the things that I've mentioned in the broadcast I've really enjoyed seeing, Messi and Karlo Makovic at the same time on the floor. They come in and there's high rebounds, there's dunkings, there's alley-oops. You can see their athleticism and presence. It's almost a different side of the team to go. And on some games, we've seen them stay with the starting lineup, Messi close a game, or Carlo close a game like we saw way back in Chicago. But adding that, so I guess the ability of the coaching staff to say, hey, maybe one of those 2 guys don't have it defensively, or we need this defensive presence. But the ability, whether it's PV or those 2 guys, they're finding ways for that moment, that time in the game to try to find that defense with those players.
I like those two guys because I think those guys, it's kind of like they're competing with one another
Right.
because they're competing for minutes is basically what it is. First, Carlo kind of nudged out ahead. He was playing harder, and it seemed like Yves Missi was kind of sort of lost, and he was trying to find something. And then all of a sudden, Yves Missi says, you know what, I'll just go in and I'll rebound like a demon, offensive rebounds. I'll block shots. And every now and then, if I catch a lob, cool. But otherwise, I'm just going to play hard as I can for as long as I can and see what happens. So then he jumped ahead. And now Carlo is saying, well, you know what? That's the recipe. Play hard all the time, be athletic. And, those guys are just utilizing the gifts they have. Now, Carlo will make some threes for you and those kinds of things. But those guys are just essentially playing as hard as they can, I think, for as long as they can. And that's all you're asking for them. Now Yves Missi's got to develop a little bit more offensively. Carlo probably gets lost defensively a few times still, but they're still playing hard and they're still basically pushing each other because, Derek Queen can't play every minute. Yeah. There's going to be games where he just doesn't have it, or there's going to be games he's going to get in foul trouble, or there's going to be games where you're going to need him off the floor defensively because, hey, this is the NBA, and sometimes dudes just get cooked. And you got to have somebody out there who's willing to be able to make those plays. And so those two guys are a nice little tag team for the Pels.
I think the effort that those guys play with and the energy that's pretty consistent has helped on defense. And I think both of those guys can move their feet as well. So it does seem like the combination of you get Herb back, you move him into the starting lineup, you have a bigger starting lineup than what you had before, and you have some of the plays that on defense that those guys are making or just their activity. It feels like the Pelicans have kind of settled in on a little bit more of a formula defensively, personnel-wise, that they can use. And, sometimes when you have big guys that can move their feet and have mobility like them, you don't have to worry about switching as much, that it's not going to be as damaging to you. So, I think all of those things have contributed to the defense being better, even though some of the big guys have room to improve on the defensive end. We know Derek Queen definitely is something that he's going to work on in the offseason, and we see a lot of rookies struggle at that end of the floor their first season, and then they gradually get better. But I'm just happy to see that they've made progress with the lineup, the starting lineup just being bigger. One of the things I've been surprised by too with the starting lineup is you think on paper that you really don't have a point guard in your starting lineup anymore. So you think, okay, the turnovers are going to go way up, the assists are probably going to go down a little bit, but it's actually been the opposite. So that's one thing that I'm curious to hear from James Borrego about is how have they been able to get the assist to turnover ratio at a high level, even though you're playing Herb Jones at point guard, who's really like a 2 or a 3, and Trey Murphy's playing the 2. He's been a 4 a lot. So you got guys that are playing away from they're handling the ball way more than they have previously in their career, but we haven't seen the problems taking care of the ball, which I think has been a big plus.
It's almost like James Borrego said, okay, I'm just going to get my best 5. I'm going to put them out on the floor, and we're going to figure it out. Mm-hmm. We've got enough guys who are not elite ball handlers, but they handle well enough. So if we've got to initiate with Zion, we can. If we got to initiate with Derek Queen, we can. If Herb's got to bring it up, we can. If Trey's got to bring it up, we can. If Sadiq Bey's got to initiate, we can. So, again, not a traditional point, but you got guys who can handle the ball. And one thing I wanted to roll back to defensively is now you don't have to be perfect all the time. You got guys who can erase mistakes at the rim. And that's huge in the NBA because, man, this is the NBA. You can't stay in front of people the whole game. Right. It's hard. So sometimes you're going to get beat. And if you don't have anything on the back line, it's just going to be a procession of layups. But the Pels now have some guys back there who can say, okay, you can get beat from time to time. I got you. I got you. You don't have to commit the foul. I got you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Coach Borrego has literally said, we'll figure it out on offense. The identity is on the defensive side of things, which is interesting where we had Walker Mell from the Charlotte Hornets come in. I think so many people talk about Coach Borrego as an offensive-minded guy. He really is a defensive guy, too. He really wants you to be aggressive. He wants you to get out there. One of the things you were talking about that I thought was interesting, Jeremiah Fears with Herb Jones coming in has really stayed a little bit more on that second unit. And I think with his speed and athleticism with the two bigs, I almost wonder, it's a fun unit to kind of look at because it's just, you talk about pace, you got putback dunks, you got high alley-oop dunks, you got a lot of different things going. And then, Jim, I kind of want to touch on, those three players that are kind of maybe leading your way on a consistent level going into the game on Monday against Sacramento. Saddiq Bey was averaging 22 points a game. Zion 21, Trey Murphy 22. That's three players, guys, that are averaging 20 points a game and a consistent, but it's because of availability, right? They're all playing together, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great to see them all be on the floor. I mean, the team overall, I love the fact that how many games lately the Pelicans injury list has been just Dejounte Murray, and the other teams have had 5 or 6 players on that. I mean, not that we want to see injuries for other teams, but we know we were on that side of the equation a lot over the last couple of years. So that's been a real positive as well. But, one thing quickly going back to one of the things that you said, to me, Jeremiah Fears looks more aggressive defensively since he's been moved to the second unit. I don't know if it's partly because the minutes are less and he can focus on that more, or if the coaches have said to him, we want you to be more disruptive on the defensive end. But it seems like he's been getting more steals and just being way more disruptive, I guess, lately.
I think it was notable at points earlier this season where Jeremiah Fears was kind of wearing the kick me sign. Anybody who saw him on defense was like, okay, I got me one. And either they post him up or they go by him. He was playing hands defense, not foot defense, not position defense. And I think he's gotten better. I think he's had a chance to, 1, sit down and kind of survey a little bit. 2, again, when Herb Jones comes back, you watch him and you're saying, okay, I see what he's doing. I see the angles. I see, the way he's being aggressive. And Jeremiah Fears is trying to do a little Grand Theft Alvarado every now and then. But he does seem to have, he's a chippy kid. So he seems to have that kind of pride where, okay, you got me, but you won't get me again. And, he's a little chirpy too, probably. And so he's got some pride. And when you're the guy who's being picked on, it helps, one, to go to the second unit because those aren't the higher level players. But it helps also to where he's feeling like, okay, I think I can get into a rhythm because he's got skills, obviously. He's in the NBA for a reason. He's athletic. He's fast. He's just got to be able to utilize that in the right situations on offense and defense. It ain't just about getting to the rim. It's also about staying in front of guys defensively, even if you don't block the shot, even if you don't steal the ball. Make them shoot a tougher shot instead of guys getting by you, compromising your defense and getting layups and those kinds of things. So he has picked up some. And it's good to see because, he's young. Obviously, he's got a great learning curve, and we're seeing some of that growth.
We'll do a handful of topics here, rapid fire style, but quickly before we get to that, just quick take. Dejounte Murray was back at practice to start the work week. I'm assuming after the All-Star break, we'll start seeing that ramp-up action. We're going to see Dejounte Murray soon on the court. What would he bring to this team?
Well, last year, 31 games, 17.5 points, 7.4 assists, 6.5 rebounds, but only 31 games, but a guy who finishes games on the court and isn't afraid to take the big shot. And a guy who's able to get his teammates, hopefully in better positions offensively, alleviate some of the pressure. So those are the things you want to see from him. You almost forget that this was a first-team all-defensive guy, not a handful of years back. So he has that element now. He's got a ways to go before he gets back into NBA game shape, 35 to 38 minute shape. Obviously, he'll come back on the minutes restriction, I'm sure. But just having his presence and the calming influence and the things he's able to do, even when he'll be limited, because he's still a pretty good defender. And you put him out there with Herb Jones, you like that combination, 2 lengthy, long-armed guys who understand how to play defense. So, you get your point guard back. Hopefully that settles your offense a little bit. But it'll just be good to see him back on the floor because, I've never ruptured an Achilles, but I understand it's one of the more difficult injuries. Now, that's the thing that used to wreck your career back, 20 years ago. But now you see guys coming back, and hopefully, he'll be able to function along with this because you got to reintegrate him. You got to get him back in. You got to figure out where you can play him. Whose minutes is he going to take? Right. Is he going to come back and start immediately? Probably not. But he'll come off the bench for a while, and eventually he's going to be starting. But, now you got to reassess your minutes, and, you got to reassess the distribution because he's a guy who kind of likes the ball in his hands. So how do you get him to buy into what's going on with this offense now? Because when you're talking about 3 consecutive games of 30 assists, right? That's significant. Now, it all goes to people got to make the shot when you pass it to them, but 30 assists in 3 straight games, man, that's a high level of basketball. Is Dejounte Murray going to be able to jump into that and fit in?
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to. There's a lot of questions. How many games is he going to be able to play? You know, how many games are going to be left in the season when he's ready to play? How many minutes he's going to play? But I mean, I look forward to, if he does come off the bench, just having another weapon of, you can play him on the ball, you can play him off the ball, you can say, hey, go out there and score, and maybe he's playing with Jeremiah Fears. I think it'll be fun, and it'll be interesting to see what impact he can make.
Yeah, let's add a little more fun to it. Speaking of fun, it's time for Player of the Week, Player to Watch, little trending numbers, and spoiler scale. So let's start with the Player of the Week. And is it a player, Jim, that got snubbed All-Star Weekend?
I think people might think that was the case. The Player of the Week is Trey Murphy. Over the last 4 games, he's averaged 29.5 points, 5.5 assists. His shooting splits are incredible, 54, 54, 89. So he's almost at the 50, 40, 90. He's 8 for 9 on free throws. So, I mean, it's very close. But yeah, he talked about after the Sacramento game about how he would have participated in the 3-point contest if he had been invited. So I don't want to put words in his mouth. I mean, it did seem like he was a little disappointed that he wasn't picked for it. And he said he didn't. I think the word he used was, I wasn't a fan of maybe seeing the players listed for it, and he's not in it. So I mean, quickly, the 8 guys that were in it: Devin Booker, Con Knipple, Damian Lillard, Tyrese Maxey, Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray, Bobby Portis, and Norman Powell. There's a couple guys in there. I don't want to call anyone out, but there's a couple guys in there that
Dame hadn't played this year.
he hasn't. I was going to get to that. He hasn't played. He's won the contest
I was
twice.
sitting here going, wait a minute.
I mean,
Right.
Dame hadn't
Lillard
played
played.
this year.
I think the case for him is, I guess he's a 2-time champion, but I mean, Larry Bird won it a few times. We could bring him back too.
I mean, good grief.
Yeah, and I mean, Tyrese Maxey is a great player. He's incredible, but I don't know if he's like a shooter the way Trey Murphy is, just for example. So it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, he could have been named for it. I definitely think that if they had selected the group maybe after his 12 3-pointer game, or the way he's been shooting lately, maybe he would have a better case. And obviously, if the Pelicans had a better record, that he would have, which is not fair to him, but it is what it is. So, yeah, Trey Murphy, player. He's my Player of the Week, but he is not the NBA's pick to be in the 3-point
Dame
contest.
ain't played this year.
I know.
I just
And one quick stat too, just to kind of illustrate again, like how Trey's been shooting the ball. Over his last 3 games, he's 23 for 40 on 3-pointers, so he's made 23.
Yeah.
This over the entire NBA last 3 games for every team, 14 is the most AJ Green that any other player's made. So I mean, 23 number 1, 14 number 2. Player to watch, I'm gonna cheat a little bit on this and say Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, because they're in the Rising Stars game. They're going to get a little bit of a break after that of a few days, which I think they need. A lot of rookies can use that. And I'll just be curious to see how they do over the last 26 games. So trending numbers, I'm going to go with Miami obviously is this week, but I'm also going to add Milwaukee and Philadelphia because we're going into the All-Star break, and they'll be the 2 teams coming out of it. For Miami, the trending number is 8-11, and that is their record since they beat New Orleans on January 4th. So just they've been up and down. They've been a team that's been hard to figure. Really no consistency. Milwaukee trending number is 3-4, and that's their record since Giannis went out with an injury. Now, everyone killed the Pelicans for losing to them, and I understand, with Giannis not playing, you want to win that game and you think you should, but they've actually won a couple other games too. They haven't been terrible since Giannis went out, so I guess that's the main point of that. And then lastly, the trending number for Philadelphia is they went 17 for 36 on 3-pointers when they beat the Pelicans recently. That was tied for the best 3-point percentage that a team has had against the Pelicans this season. And so the Pelicans have actually done a really good job, a lot better job defending the 3-point line lately. But that game specifically, that hurt them a lot. And then Maxey and Joel Embiid both made huge threes that pretty much put that game away at the end. So lastly, and I know this is something that we have a good time with, but the spoiler scale.
There it is.
So this is the second edition of the spoiler scale. We did it with Andrew Lopez. Feel free to jump in if you agree or disagree. 1 to 10 scale. As you know, 10 is they beat the Lakers and knocked them out of the playoff race the last day of the season. 1 is against a team that has nothing to play for. So here we go. Pretty good spoiler scale, actually, of this set of games. For Miami, I have it as a 5. They're 8th place in the Eastern Conference. They're 28 and 27. It's kind of in the middle. they have a chance to move up or down. So, I mean, they have a good amount to play for. Milwaukee, I have the spoiler scale as a 7. And the reason I have that very high, it's not just because the Bucks are they're in 12th place. They're 2.5 games out of 10th. But the rematch after the bitter overtime loss, that one goes up on the scale because you want to get some payback. Yeah. And then Philadelphia, spoiler scale I have is a 6. They're 6th in the East, and they're only 1.5 games ahead of Orlando, which is in 7th place. So obviously that's the big cutoff mark of you want to avoid being in the play-in. So that one I have a little bit as above average in terms of the motivation for the Pelicans.
See, now I would go a little higher on Philly, maybe 7, 8, because Joel Embiid had his way, and Maxey kind of, two guys kind of got you.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, how do you stop one of those guys or slow down one of those guys? Or do you just concede and try to stop everybody else? Does Kelly Oubre get you? So, that one I kind of, because I was a little ticked off watching that game, to be honest with you, because, one, Embiid got 1,000 free throws. But two, I was just a little ticked off. It was like, okay, man, I get it. Those are two great players, but, man, you just want to be able to slow them down and stop them. Yeah. Somebody at some point.
Yeah, no doubt. It kind of felt like that game, you couldn't get any rhythm going because of those whistles. I'm going to go 7 across the board and call it Revenge Week. There's Shark Week.
Yes.
How about Revenge Week? Because those are all of those teams you can do. And you probably had a shot against them. So let's see what takes place. Always a pleasure, John.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate
it. Of course, all those amazing facts and numbers. Jim Eichenhofer Pelicans.com does it before the game, after the game, during the game. He's going to work all-star break. No, you're not. No. But go check it out online here as well. And as always, we appreciate you for tuning us in on the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. We'll see you next time.